Hey everyone, this is just a quick video on reviewing whether or not your fractions are in lowest terms. Before we do that, let's just do a quick definition. A fraction is said to be in lowest terms if your numerator and the denominator are what we would call relatively prime, which means they have no other common factor except 1. What does that mean? Nothing else can be divided into these numbers except 1. And we also refer to that as simplify or in simplest forms. So in order to be sure that your fractions are in lowest terms, you really need to know your multiplication tables and you really need to know the factors of a number. So let's take an example of 24. If you know your multiplication tables, you would know then the numbers that divide evenly into 24. And they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. Quite a few. What that means is 2 times 12 would be 24 and the opposite, and 3 times 8 is 24, and 4 times 6 is 24, and 24 times 1 is 24. So all of these numbers will divide evenly into 24, and they are called the factors of that number. Okay, if you remember in class, I found this great little reference sheet, and I basically refer to this as the 6 questions to ask yourself if you're in lowest terms. It's probably one of the best items I've ever found, and I share it with all of my students. If you can remember these 6 things, you will never have to worry again as to whether or not you're in lowest terms. And let's review them quickly. Number 1. Is 1 in the numerator? If you have 1 in the numerator, you don't have to consider this any further. You're automatically in lowest terms. So the example here is 1/4 and 1/2. Each one of these, 1 is in the numerator, you're in lowest terms. Number 2. I always refer to this in class as my favorite. Is the numerator 1 less than the denominator? The example here is 7/8. 7 over 8. 7 is 1 less than 8, so it's automatically lowest terms. 1/2, 1 is actually 1 less than 2, and so that is automatically lowest terms. That also fits into number 1 because we have the 1 in the numerator. 8 over 9, lowest terms. 10 over 11, lowest terms. 21 over 22, lowest terms. 30 over 31, lowest terms. 52 over 53, lowest terms. Every time the top number is 1 less than the bottom, you're automatically in lowest terms. This is going to save you a lot of time. Number 3. Can the denominator be evenly divided by the numerator? But I like to just say, can you take the top number and divide it evenly into the bottom? When this happens, you always have 1 on top. So that means you're going to be in lowest terms because that falls into number 1. And then in order to find the bottom number, all you have to do is take the numerator, in this case it's 3, and then ask yourself 3 times what will give me what's in the denominator. In this case it's 9. Well, 3 times 3 is 9, so the answer is 1 over 3. Every time you can divide the top number into the bottom number, the reduced fraction is always 1 on top, and then you just have to find out what you would multiply to get that bottom number. Number 4. Number 4 is one of the skills that we talked about probably on the first day, and that is to recognize when you have 1/2 as a fraction. And any fraction is 1/2 when the numerator is half the denominator. This example is 4 over 8. 4 is half of 8. It's automatically 1/2. 5 over 10, automatically 1/2 because 5 is half of 10. 6 over 12, automatically 1/2 because 6 is half of 12. 12 over 24, 1/2 because 12 is half of 24. That's a good one. We like that one. Number 5. Do you have even numbers in the top and the bottom? We have, as an example, 6 over 8. 6 is even, 8 is even. And notice that 6 over 8 doesn't fall into the previous categories. We don't have 1 on top. It's not 1 less. It doesn't divide evenly into the bottom. And it's certainly not half of 8. But they are both even. So that means every time you have two even numbers, you know at the very least you can divide by 2. Now there may be a better number to divide by that'll get you there faster, but 2 will always work. So in this case, 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then that goes back to my favorite. 3 over 4 is 1 less than the denominator, and so it's automatically lowest terms. So if you're doing a problem and you get to the end and you want to know if you're in lowest terms and you run through these first 5, does it have 1 on top? Is it 1 less? Can I divide the top into the bottom? Is the top number half of the bottom number? Or do I have 2 even numbers? If you've run through those first 5 questions in your head, then there's only one more thing you have to ask yourself, and that is, do I have common factors? And in number 6, the example is 6 over 9. So if you look at that, you can see that it doesn't fall into the first 5, 1 through 5. There's no 1 on top. It's not 1 less. It's not half. It can't divide evenly. And they're both not even numbers. Because 6 is even, but 9 is odd. So now we have to know whether or not we have common factors before we can say for sure that we're done. So let's look at that. We have 6 and we have 9. We have to find the factors of 6 and 9. Okay, so we start with 6, 1, because 1 times 6, 2, because 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 2 is 6, and of course 6. Those are the factors of 6. All of these numbers divide evenly. And the factors of 9, we start with 1, and 3 times 3 is 9, and then of course 9, because 9 times 1 is 9. So what that tells us is we do have a common factor of both numbers, which is 3. And then we'll take our fraction, and we know that we can divide by 3, so we have 6 over 9, and we divide by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. And that brings us back to my favorite. It's 1 less than the denominator, and you're automatically in lowest terms. If you can remember these and run through these questions in your head, then you will be sure that you're in lowest terms. I did not cover improper fractions in this video. But let me just say, I mean, I can do that in a later video, but let me just say that if you end up with an improper answer, generally speaking, you're going to need to bring that out of improper, and you're either going to end up with a whole number, one whole number, or a mixed number, which is a whole and a proper fraction. So I'll cover that at a later time, but this sheet is really important, and it will really help you to understand whether or not you're finished with your problem. I hope this helps, and I'll see you in class.